Now to our lead story, of course, it's 2 in 2, and this time around, the CEO of South African Airways has resigned. Vuyani Jagana steps down after 18 months in charge of the parastatal, having joined them in November of 2018. He, of course, does join now Phakamani Khatebe, who stepped down as CEO of Eskom on May the 24th. And that scenario, of course, puts South Africa in a dire situation. 2 of South Africa's parastatals losing their heads. I'm joined in studio by Kevin Lings, the chief economist at Stanlib, as we unpack this one just a little bit more and what it means for the country. Kevin, appreciate your time.
Pleasure.
It's a dire situation, isn't it? And it gets compounded in any worse. Are you surprised at all?
Look, I think the pressure in these organizations is enormous. Obviously, they're really struggling. They need financial support. They need technical support. I'm not too surprised that we've seen some resignations, and I wouldn't be surprised if we see more in the future.
I noted a little bit earlier on just the letter that Vuyani Jagana then posted out with regards to his resignation, and he painted the dire picture in which they currently stand.
I think there's a lot of validity in what he's saying, right? Yeah. So he's talking about some of the bureaucracy, some of the inconsistency. It's very difficult when you're trying to turn around an organization that's as big as, let's say, South African Airways or Eskom. You need a huge amount of support from government, and you need that support in various ways, one of which is the ability to make decisions quickly. Another is knowing what sort of financial backing you're going to have in the future. So it's not just about, oh, you've got some financial backing for this month or for the next 3 months, but do you have financial backing for the next couple of years? And what sort of time period is government allowing you free rein to try and get these organizations into better shape? So I suspect there's bureaucracy. I suspect there's a huge amount of pressure because obviously the country can't wait for the turnaround. These institutions are critical for the performance of the country. So you need to try and deliver a positive outcome as soon as possible. You've got a minister that clearly wants answers and needs to report back to the president. So you're looking at pretty much the most difficult job or set of jobs in the country with an intense focus, not just from internally, but externally. Remember, you've got lots of foreign investors that are looking at South Africa. They're evaluating our prospects. You've got credit rating agencies wanting to know these organizations are being better run. You've got South African investors looking to commit more money, but they need to know these organizations are going to deliver the infrastructure. This is an intense focus. So I'm not surprised there's some job losses. There have been many job losses in SOEs. If you look at Eskom, I don't know, I was looking at the last, since 2007, they've had more than 10 different CEOs. So these organizations are fragile and they need a huge amount of support and they need consistency in the executive.
I'm going to go rogue here and ask you this one then. We have a dire situation, right? We know the situation. 440 with regards to the debt bill for Eskom, over 60 possibly, if not over 20 rather, should I say, for SAA, and it could be even worse rather, right?
Sure.
How about we forget the fact that we have a credit rating? We forget all the other symptoms of having to pay off people and perhaps still trying to maintain a slightly more credible stance, and we just say we're going to start from rock bottom and build up from there and forget the rest of the world. Can we do that? Is there a way to do that?
Look, I think it's not a bad idea to say I'm going to focus on the institution and what makes this institution function correctly, irrespective of where this pressure is coming from. And I'm going to have to put this institution into better shape over a period of time. And I think if you do that and you are able to articulate that plan back to foreign investors, back to the rating agencies, I think they buy into it. What the rating agencies would want to see above everything else is that you've got a plan and that the plan seems logical. So I don't think you would come up with something different if you said there weren't any rating agencies. Fundamentally, these organizations have to run more effectively. There isn't an endless amount of money to keep supporting, to keep bailing out. Tax revenues under pressure. So I think that that's not a bad idea to say, look, just focus on the organization and get it right, and let the cabinet ministers and the president worry about the other political issues. I think that needs to be, so you need to back the CEO of these organizations.
What if we just telecomize it? And I'm using that that term loosely. So 40% ownership to government, give it to somebody else, let it run the way it has. Look at Telkom now.
I think Telkom is an excellent example of how you can turn around an SOE. And I think that the idea of unbundling Eskom is, I think, a good idea. And I think that we should support a much closer link, or let's say a private-public partnership in some form or other with the private sector, and let private sector funding also get involved. This doesn't have to be all on the back of the government's balance sheet. And I think we can find a solution, and I think that way we can bring in a broader selection of skills into those organizations.
I'm just going to ask my team as well if they could bring up the graphs that we had a little bit earlier on with regards to both SAA, and we'll start off with the SAA one where Vuyani Jagana was speaking, and just hopefully note just the sentiments he put out there, and hopefully touch on that and really see how it's a man who's saying he did not get the government support he had hoped for. This is after 5 billion rand which had come in 2018, 2019, which means that it's difficult to pay on debtors who now have an 11 billion rand debt pile which they need to pay off just this year alone. So the scenario just gets worse and worse and worse.
That's right. So the 5 billion that SA was given was really a stopgap. It wasn't a long-term solution. It was really to deal with some immediate concerns around creditor payments. And obviously the existing debt and the commitments remain. And so there's no doubt that SAA is going to need additional funding going forward. There's also no doubt that SAA from month to month is still under pressure. So this is a long-term turnaround. What, if you're the boss of SAA, you're the CEO of SAA, what you want to know is that government understands that and government is backing your strategy. Clearly the CEO feels that that wasn't the case, partly to do with the splitting of priorities between National Treasury and the Department of Public Enterprises. So you need to clarify that. Who do you report to? And can you give that CEO much more scope to do the job effectively, which means government has to reduce the bureaucracy and give the CEO comfort that he can make decisions that will benefit the institution longer term.
This is not comfortable for any CEO who steps into Eskom's shoes now. This is a debt profile, right? So this is who you have to pay off over the next couple of years. And the largely orange part are just interest alone.
That's right. So the debt level within Eskom we know is enormous. And their problem is this profile of debt that is maturing within a couple of years. So and even this year you're going to find Eskom under pressure, and over the next couple of years that pressure is going to get a lot more intense. So that means that not only do you have to get your institution functioning on a yearly basis to be at least break even or profitable, but you've got to somehow find a way to pay back that debt and service that debt. In order to get foreign investors to give you this leeway to finance this, you're going to have to show that the institution's on better ground, which means you need a CEO back in there, and that CEO needs to clearly have also technical expertise on how to run an electricity company. And then you've got to put in front of investors, what is your strategy for the next 5 years? What is the plan? If we're going to unbundle Eskom, what is the nature of that unbundling, and how does the unbundling really benefit Eskom and the country? I would say where I'm critical of government is they haven't got to the point of putting those longer term plans on the table. Therefore, if you take the role, you're going to be trying to manage this short term. That's not the answer.
Not going to work at all. Kevin, really, really appreciate your insight. Always great having you on board. Thank you so much for that. Kevin Lings there, Chief Economist at Stanlib, joining us to unpack that SOE story. So who sits in the hot seat next is perhaps the big question. The 8th CEO in 6 years to leave SAA. We'll see what happens with that story. Let's quickly move on to some sports news now. Greek 6th seed Stefanos Tsitsipas crashed out in the 4th round of the French Open